What is up, guys? This is going to be a really quick things to remember video focused around the Swordsoul card because I've noticed a lot of people making minor mistakes with this deck when playing online. Just some minor things you need to keep in mind when you play this deck or against this deck. Shoutouts to DB Grinder. This is a series that he does on his channel pretty regularly. I think it's pretty neat. Just like a really short couple-minute video on some tips. So there's going to be 10 in this video. Let's just start off. Tip number 1 is that sudden shift targets exactly 2 cards your opponent controls, not up to 2. So if you have only 1 card, then you can't be sudden shifted. So this is one easy way to play around sudden shift: is you summon 1 monster, you beat over their only Wyrm, and then you just do whatever you want in main phase 2. This is really relevant when they have only a Moye or a Taya or even a token, and you can just kill it first, and it effectively turns off shift, and then you just do the rest of your stuff in main phase 2. So pretty straightforward. Moving on to the next one. This is a big one that I've seen people mess up. Chi Xiao and Baxia are not generic. They need a non-tuner Wyrm monster. So if you have Gamma Driver, you cannot go into Chi Xiao with these. If you have Ecclesia and like a Destiny Hero, Celestial, or a Token Collector, I've seen this with as well, you can't go into Chi Xiao. You also can't go into Baxia because this also needs a non-tuner Wyrm. So very, very important. Keep these in mind. Another important thing that I didn't mention in this replay is for Chi Xiao, you can only use one of these effects per turn. You cannot add to hand and banish and then also negate in the same turn. So I've seen people do the Rhoda and then still use the effect in the same turn. You know, after turn 1, you can't do that. So keep that in mind. Next tip is Moe reveals his cost. So this comes before the semicolon here. So you reveal a Shangjian or a Wyrm in your hand, or Swordsoul or Wyrm monster in your hand before doing its effect, and so you do this immediately on activation. So if they imperm it, you're still revealing when you activate this effect, so you get that intel as the opponent, so keep that in mind. This is also important if your deck plays Prosperity. Prosperity prevents you from drawing the entire turn, so just make sure that if your opponent has used Prosp, that they aren't cheating by accident and activating the effect of their Moyes to draw, because that won't be allowed in this scenario. Moving on to the next tip, Long Yuan has one effect that involves special summoning it from the hand and then the token at the same time. So similarly to a card like Nibiru, it summons itself and the token all in one effect. Once it actually gets summoned, you can't imperm this. It's not 2 separate effects, so imperm does nothing to Long Yuan pretty much. Next tip. Very, very simple. I've done this a billion times. Don't forget your Ecclesia's effect to add back in the end phase. It's just super easy to forget this, especially off of Instant Fusion. I feel like if you play Fusion Destiny, you're pretty used to adding this back, because it's a pretty obvious loop. But with Instant Fusion, it's really, really easy to just forget about this card, so don't forget that. It could mean the difference between winning or losing the game. Next tip is to not forget all of Baroness's effects. So this card has 3 effects and they're all fantastic. So the first effect is that randomly, for no reason, it just has this effect where once per turn you can pop anything on the field. So don't forget about this one. You can just destroy a card. So in this case I'm going to destroy this Zeus on their field. The next effect is the one that most people know, is that you can activate this effect once while it's face up on the field. You can just negate anything and then destroy it. So that's pretty much the important one. And the last one is that when the play passes back to you, typically during like the next standby phase, you can use Baroness to tag out in the standby phase. You can revive a level 9 or lower monster in your graveyard. So this can be a Synchro monster, this can be Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, this can very often be like a Taya in your graveyard that you used in the previous turn, and then your Taya will just get you into more Synchros for this turn. So it's a great way to kind of recycle your Baroness once you've already used her negate, and then you can just, you know, put her back and then do more explosive plays after that. The next tip is going to be that the token summoning from anything in this deck, really, the tuner token is locking you into Synchros. This is super, super easy to forget. So let's say I go Taya here, I banish my trap to play around cards like Imperm, and then he doesn't Imperm me and I decide to summon the token anyway. And then I go into Chi Xiao and I do my standard stuff, and I want to just be able to play Fusion Destiny at the end of this. I can't, because the token off Sudden Shift is still locking me into Synchro monsters. So be careful that you don't accidentally like screw yourself by summoning too many tokens or by having a token out when you're trying to do other stuff that's not Synchros. So super easy to forget. This is also very important in the Tenny build. You have a Tenny on the field, you have a token, you can't just link the Tenny into Monk. So if you're playing against this deck, be very aware of that as well. Next tip, Ashuna locks you into Wyrms. So this is extremely relevant now with Baroness out. People will try to go for Ashuna and go into the standard combo. They'll go Chi Xiao, adding a Long Yuan, add back a Wyrm, and then they'll go long Yuan here, and then people will try to make Baroness. You can't do this because you are locked into Wyrm monsters. So this is the scenario where you probably want to make Chungying instead, because, I mean, yeah, you're locked into Wyrms. So very important, if you're playing against a Tenyi player or a player with Tenyi cards in their Swordsoul deck, be aware of their Ashuna restrictions. And then finally, the last tip is that Token Collector works both ways. So if you're playing the Mirror and they have a Token Collector, they also can't summon tokens, because this is not a one-way floodgate. This just says neither player can summon tokens at all. So keep that in mind. They can't just do their own things under their own collector. They have to actually get rid of their collector first. The second thing is that if there is a Token Collector on the field, your opponent can't use Nibiru because Nibiru summons a token. It's a mandatory part of Nibiru's effect to summon a token, so you don't ever have to be afraid of Nibiru activating while Collector is up. Although do note that once you actually do get rid of the Collector, then Nibiru will be turned back on, of course. So all of these things are important to keep in mind. That's going to do it for this video. Quick tips, like and subscribe. Let me know about anything else you'd like to see in the comments. Till then, see you next time. Peace.